Hey friends, it's time. I think what's been going on my mind. What's been going on in my mind? I think I want to tell my story, and maybe not all of it, but just some of it and just parts of it. But I was born in a place called Millardville, which is in the lower part of Coquitlam, BC. And at one time it had the largest population of French people outside of Quebec. They all came to work at a place called Fraser Mills. And so I spoke French apparently till I was 4 or 5 years old, because I think we had a neighbor who was quite fluent. And my dad spoke a little bit, I think. But I can't remember any French. I don't even remember how to swear in French. So I do have a friend who tells me that, who is bilingual, and tells me that it's much more satisfying to swear in French than it is in English. Well, I wouldn't know. Anyway, born in Coquitlam, my mom had 8 kids, 7 from my dad, Stan, and then another brother from Herman. Herman the German, cool guy. Anyway, shout out to Viola. I love you, Viola, Elma Rose. And yeah, that's my mom. Anyway, I'm going to skip over a lot of childhood stuff. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But by the time I reached my early 20s, I had an alcohol problem, and I was living a kind of a lifestyle that just wasn't agreeing with me. After a while, I was selling drugs. As a teenager and young adult, I'd get thrown in the hoosekow every once in a while for the weekend or what have you. And I was just getting to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I know that there's some of you out there that know what that's like. So I started circling around, going to 12-step meetings and things like that. And I had an auntie who went to a program called Al-Anon, and it's kind of people who have been affected by alcoholism, family and friends. And anyway, this auntie, Auntie Lee, shout out to Auntie Lee. Shout out to her kids that are still living, which would be Valerie, Rick, and Garnet. Auntie Lee was a strong figure in my life. And we used to show up there at her place at midnight or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, because back in those days you couldn't get beer, and if it was a Sunday you couldn't get beer at all. So we would show up there to try to get beer, and she would just sit there and talk to me about alcoholism, and I was kind of circling around it at the time. I remember reading articles in the paper about it and things like that. And I remember going into one of the Alano clubs in New Westminster, and I saw a guy wearing I think he was wearing a Labatt's blue shirt or something. And I thought, this is phony. I'm out of here. Yeah. So anyway, I asked my Auntie Lee, after I got a little bit tired of being sick and tired, I asked her to take me to an Al-Anon meeting where it's children and families of alcoholics, and I started going to those meetings, and it was interesting, but there was girls there, so I stayed. That's kind of part of it, for sure. I mean, I was a young man, 24 years old, and yeah, that's a part of my story, for sure. Anyhow, I started to get to know some of the people, and but I still drank, I still did drugs, and I was just, I wasn't really into drugs, actually. I didn't like weed, it just made me paranoid. I like booze, you know. Booze was like, yeah, let's go. Marijuana and other drugs just made me feel out of control, and when I drank alcohol, I felt like I was in control, and, you know, let's go, let's move, let's party. I wasn't a sit in the basement by myself kind of drunk. I was, let's get up and go and do something. So I drank and drove all the time. And shout out to my buddy Billy Gilks. They call him Black Bill out in lives in the Sunshine Coast of BC. He was one of my last drinking buddies there. We hung out for a while. I remember saying to him, or he said it to me, I can't remember, we said, yeah, man, finally I found someone I could drink with. What an aspiration. Anyway, maybe I should just be an ass instead of an aspiration. Oh, here comes another car trying to pass me. People in Ontario are really on the move. You gotta be chill, like BC, man. That's like a grandfather. He's like 80 years old. This guy just passed me. Anyway, I digress. What was I talking about? Oh, Billy Gilks. Anyway, shout out to Maxine too, and all the Gilks girls. Just cool people, really nice people. Anyway, I kept living that lifestyle. I remember sitting around a place in Millardville. My buddy Norman McDonald. There's some of you on here that know Norman McDonald. I love Norman. He was just a laid-back dude, and for some reason I had a real connection with Norman. I don't know why. I just like the way he rolled, man. He had a '57 Cadillac with a 501 motor. Oh, that was awesome. Anyway, old Norman. I can tell you some stories about Norman. There's people on here who know about the story about Norman, but I'm not going to share it right now. Anyway, I forgot where I was. Anyhow, I was at Norman's place, that's right, in Millardville, Laval Square, where Paul Dow used to live, and Laura and Diane and Dow. But anyway, I was at Norman's place, and it was early in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was sitting around the table, and there was a biker, and there was a prostitute, and there was a guy who just got out of jail for kidnapping, and I thought, you know what, I just don't belong here. I just really don't. I think it was 1985 or 86. I remember the Montreal Canadiens had won the Stanley Cup that year, and I didn't like it. I was mad. I used to get bent out of shape about stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, that was a contributor. And then I think that year or the year before, I was arrested for selling marijuana. They came to the house and, kicked in the front door and grabbed me and threw me in handcuffs and put me in the back of a police car and left the handcuffs on extra tight just to teach me a lesson. They were behind my back, so they put me in the cop car, took me down to the cop shop, which was on Christmas Way in Port Coquitlam. Some of you might remember that, but I thought it's just an ironic name because the name Christmas is just seems like so benevolent or whatever. And here I am sitting in a jail cell with extra tight handcuffs. So they threw me in a cell, and it was just the bars, no bed, no nothing, no sink, just a drain in the floor, and all the floors kind of sloped towards the drain, so anybody peed in there. I think it was for drunks and short time. Anyway, they left me there extra long, just a couple hours, left the handcuffs on extra tight, because why not? Trying to teach me a lesson, and you know what? To be fair, that was a lesson, and I had some time to ponder. And here I was, sitting on the floor, cross-legged with my hands behind my back, and thinking about the position I was in, and I wasn't angry or anything like that. I was just like, whoa, I got myself in a pickle here. Anyway, you know how it is with marijuana, and a lot of criminal cases, and they just, I mean, marijuana is nothing now, but back in those days it was a big deal, so they just, they let me go, and I got a court date later on, and I think I got a fine of $500 or something. I don't really remember, but yeah, I got a little paranoid after that for sure. I think I even still sold some drugs while I was, even after that. But anyway, I was still going to those Al-Anon meetings, and met some people there. They actually went to some other 12-step meetings, and one day I had a particularly bad hangover. This was at the Honey Shack, we called it, because it was a piece of property owned by BC, a place called BC Honey, and they had little house on the property, and we called it the Honey Shack. And there was a beauty salon downstairs, and I think it was called Irene's. Someone will have to jar my memory on that. But anyway, she would do perms, and the whole house would stink like a perm. It was just kind of gross. Anyway, we did a lot of partying in that house, and always had the music cranked, of course, and loud, raunchy rock and roll with people smoking dope and having keg parties and rough characters around and girls, and just a bad scene, really. I mean, we thought it was fun, and maybe some of it was, but I was a hurt unit. Anyway, one morning I woke up from a particularly bad hangover. Probably maybe not the worst I've ever had, but it was a doozy buy. And for the first time in my life, I said a prayer, and I didn't really know any prayers because we didn't grow up with religious people or anything. Actually, we made fun of religious people. I mean, that was kind of a sport with my family. I mean, the bottle opener, we called it the church key. Anyway, actually, when we were young, my mom, shout out to Mom again, they sent us to church because the bus would come by and pick us up and take us to Austin Avenue Chapel. And we would sing, all the kids' songs. Jesus loves me, this I know. Stop and let me tell you what the Lord has done for me. Stop. I think I used to go with my cousin Garnet too. Anyway, I remember the songs, and that affected me. Later in life, we'll come to that. So anyway, I was lying in that bed with a hangover, a water bed by chance. It was 1986, so water beds were in, and I was hungover lying in my water bed. Try that sometime. And anyway, for the first time in my life, I said a prayer. And I didn't know any fancy prayers. I didn't know any Bible verses. I didn't know, anything. For God so loved the world or anything like that. And, John 3:16, I wouldn't know that. It just wasn't part of my world, man. Religious people or church people, they were just kind of weird. I didn't get it. I mean, the weekends were drinking. Sundays was no different. I mean, what would somebody invite me to church? I'd be like, yeah. Anyway, so for the first time in my life, I said a prayer, and the only prayer that I knew was the prayer of desperation. And a shout out to my buddy Ian Shaw, first person I ever heard call it the gift of desperation. Amen. Anyway, I was given the gift of desperation, and I said the only prayer that I could, and it was, help me God. It's the only thing I could say. I didn't know anything else, right? And this is where it gets kind of maybe coincidental to some people, and other people might call it divine intervention. But after I said that prayer, the phone rang, and it was a buddy of mine that went to some of the 12, not a buddy, just an acquaintance. Who went to some 12-step meetings, and I said, hey, can you take me to one of those meetings? And he was kind of a meek kind of, Mark his name was, and he was kind of meek and quiet, and he was kind of a nervous dude, but I liked him. He was cool. I really did like him. Anyway, he phoned, and I said, hey man, can you take me to one of them meetings? And he said, yeah, but I only go once a week. And it was on a Friday. No, it was a Saturday night, I think. Yes, it was a Saturday night. And it was at Mount St. Joseph Hospital. So this was Sunday morning, and I had to wait till Saturday to go to the meeting. Well, I used to go to a lot of concerts, and if I went to a concert, you can bet I'd be drinking, especially if it was a place called the Town Pump. And some of you know this, but I have a lot of information in my head that's rather useless. Maybe not. But anyway, it's about rock trivia. Like, I can tell you, I can name a song. I've named a song in one note before, and it's a dumb skill that I have. Anyway, I used to phone the radio station at noon because they'd have rock trivia at noon and you could win prizes, and I won prizes all the time. And it was back in the day when nobody had a cell phone, of course, and the neighbors, everybody in the neighborhood would call, and if somebody got through, I would run over to their house and I would get on the phone and answer the questions. Anyway, I had won tickets from Rock Trivia for, I think, to go see Doug and the Slugs. I don't know if anybody remembers that band, Doug and the Slugs, but it was like, too bad that you had to get caught. It's not like you to lose face, so sad. Anyway, someone else passing me. Anyway, so that was Friday night, Doug and the Slugs. And if I went to Doug and the Slugs, you bet I would have been drinking. And but somebody, I can't remember how it went down, but Bonnie Gilks, who I used to go out with, and I can't remember our status at that time. I don't think we weren't going out. No, definitely we're not. Anyway, I think I went with her. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie. But we went to see Billy Joel, who was playing at the Pacific Coliseum, and there was no beer at that time at the Pacific Coliseum. And yeah, I went and saw Billy Joel Friday night, stayed sober. Saturday night I went to my first 12-step meeting, and I've been sober ever since that day. That phone call took place on November 23rd, 1986. So I'm 60 years old, going to be 61 in a couple weeks. And yeah, so I've been sober for 36 and a half years or something like that. So anyway, I went to that 12-step meeting, and it kind of freaked me out. They said a prayer at the end, and they held hands. And this particular one was a candlelight meeting. They're not that common, but anyway, this was a candlelight meeting, so they shut off all lights and lit candles, and people shared. And that kind of was weird. But anyway, I hung in there and made it through that. And I started going to these meetings by myself, and I remember one time, it was just a couple of weeks into it, and at the time, for some reason, I was riding the bus. Yeah, for some reason. It's because I was broke and stupid. I spent a lot of my time selling dope, drinking, collecting welfare, collecting UIC, all at the same time sometimes, because my goal in life was just to drink. I didn't care about nothing else. I didn't care what anybody thought about it. I had no goals or aspirations in life. I thought, yeah, let's drink and party, and maybe I'll meet a girl, you know, whatever. A fool. That's what you call a fool. The Bible calls that a fool. I know that today. I was a fool. So I kept going to these 12-step meetings, and I remember going to one and coming home and riding on the bus, and I rode on the bus right past the Honey Shack. And some of my brothers were still living there. We used to all live together at various times, brothers and cousins and friends. Be a pile of guys, and sometimes girls, but mostly guys. I was on the bus, and it was at 6th Street, New Westminster, no, Burnaby, 6th Street, and 13th Avenue. Anyway, riding on the bus, it was a Friday night or a Saturday night. I think I was at that candlelight meeting, I'm not sure. And, you know, I could have just ding the buzzer on the bus and got off and went and joined the party, because I saw all the cars there. And but you know what? For whatever reason, I stayed on the bus and I just kept going. And that was lonely, man. You know, when all you got is drinking buddies, and then you just get sober all the time. The drinking buddies just really don't have much. There's just not that much connection, and I love those people, and some of them are, you know, adults today, like me. I'm an adult too. Pick me, I'm an adult. Anyway, they're responsible adults, and they outgrew that thing, but I needed a kick in the rear end to get me kick-started on the journey of this whole journey of being a grown-up. And I'm not so sure about it still, but I'm here anyway. All grown up? Nah, I'm not all grown up. But anyway, things progressed. I kept going to those meetings. I met I met some people in Millardville, you know. A lot of my story centers around Millardville. A lot of my people. Shout out to my Millardville people. I love you guys. Anyway, I started going to a meeting in Millardville, and I met a fellow named Ed Gillis, who's married to, and eventually married Eleanor Gillis. Shout out to Eleanor. I don't know if anybody will get this video to Eleanor, but I love you, Eleanor. Anyway, my buddy Ed Gillis invited me to what they call the step meeting, and so it's just kind of they go through the 12 steps, and some of you might remember, or might be familiar with the 12 steps, originally from AA, and a lot of there's a lot of groups, self-help groups, I guess they call them, that use the 12 steps. Anyway, I started going to the 12-step meeting in someone's basement. I remember it was on Austin Road, or somewhere off Austin Road in Coquitlam, and with some characters. I remember there was a lady there. You had the proverbial dog in her purse, you know, little frightened little creature, and a couple of other folks that really were, you know, they're cool. We were all screwed up, you know. We were just people with problems. Anyway, I started going through the 12 steps, and one of the 12 steps is step 4, which is take inventory of yourself. It says, took personal inventory. For some reason, I'm blanking out on step 4, which is really odd because I've been doing this for so long. I'm thinking about step 10, which says continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. But anyway, step 4. Anyway, wow, I can't remember step 4. Anyway, step 4 is just taking inventory of yourself, and the good and the bad. And of course, I wasn't too interested in the good because I wanted to drag myself through the mud for whatever sick reason that is. So I did my step 4, which is writing down your resentments. Mostly it's about who you're resentful at. And I remember sitting in one of those meetings and someone said, write down all the people and places and things you're resentful about. And I remember writing down a list of 90 people. Like, hello? Talk about angry young man. You know, that anger, you pour alcohol on top of it, you get an explosion, and that was me. I mean, I was a fairly mild-mannered drunk. I mean, I only fought if it was a necessity, or somebody was really bugging me. Like I had a buddy, Warren Grover. I don't know if Grover, he's still alive, but I don't know if he'll ever see this. But he used to bug me so bad that I would have a hissy fit and try to scrap him, and he'd just be calm and collected. Say, yeah, I'll just wait for the storm to blow over, then I'll get you. And he was right, too, because he was a tough guy, and I was not a tough guy. I mean, I was well built in those days, but he used to call me Hercules. Hey, Hercules! Anyway. Oh, now I forgot where I was after that. Anyway, wrote down all the people that I was mad at, angry. 90 people, I mean, gee whiz. Anyhow, I did what they call the 12-step, through this 12-step, they got a bunch of questions they ask you, and you ask yourself these questions. And anyway, I made an appointment for step 5. Step 5 is to a Catholic, it might be kind of like confession, only this is more of a spill your guts counseling session, I'd say, step 5. Anyway, God, my memory is blanking on step 5. I can't believe it. I'm going to have to write it down below. Jeez, it's early in the morning here and I haven't had breakfast yet, so I almost didn't do this because it was so early in the morning. Anyway, I went to see this fella. I made the appointment, and there's a tip for you if you ever do something like this. Make the appointment, that ensures that you finish it. So I did a bunch of writing, and I probably wrote 90 pages, and a bunch of baloney, but there was a lot of cathartic stuff in there. So anyway, I go to see this retired Anglican minister. He lived at 22nd and Cambie, and it's basically downtown, or close to it, but in the middle of the hubbub in Vancouver. And I lived at the Honey Shack still. I think I did. Yeah, I lived at the Honey Shack. So, yeah. So I drove down there, and I was an angry young man giving everybody the finger and racing around. I was in my 67, or was it a 72? I can't remember. And it was a Dodge Dart with a slant 6. She was green. She was a beauty, eh? I think I paid $150 for it. It was a good car. I can't remember what happened to it. Anyway, I got my appointment with this guy. I went down to see him, and he listened to me. And he was a gentle old soul and teetotaler. And he kind of nodded in the appropriate places and sort of went, you know, where I said something particularly bad that I had done. And, you know, when it was over, he gave me a good word. And what I mean by that was he gave me a word of encouragement. And that was rare. Like, I actually don't remember, probably it happened, but I don't remember anyone ever giving me a compliment or saying something nice to me, ever. Not once. It probably happened, but I don't remember. See, the type of thing that happened around my place was we sat around the table, we drank beer, smoked cigarettes, and had the music on, and just kibitzed and BS'd, and put each other down, and whoever wasn't there, we put them down, and if I wasn't there, they were putting me down. I mean, telling the same joke and the same story. You know what I'm talking about, you people that know. Telling the same story over and over. Anyway, he gave me a good word. He gave me some compliments. You see, I was a reader. I read. And that was the only escape that I had back. We didn't have video games. We had TV and all that. But we didn't have video games and all the distractions you have today. So I was a reader. And I read a lot. As a kid, I was just kind of a troubled kid and shy and all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, he gave me some compliments. He noticed that I had a vocabulary, and I can't remember what else he told me, but he gave me some compliments, and it just floored me. It floored me. And the reason it floored me, I think, is because I was used to BS. I know what BS is. I've heard it all my life. And when somebody said something to me about me that was true, it rang like a bell. Bing! The truth. Woo! And it floored me. And, you know, when I left that place, I was walking on air. I was just 3 feet off the ground. And, you know, when I drove back to Burnaby from East Vancouver there, or East Van, not East Van, Central Van, anyway. From Cambie 22nd to the Honey Shack, I was calm. A calm driver. I was 24 years old and angry before I went there, and then I was calm when I left. And I drove home, and I was just, of course, you're very reflective after something like that happened. So I remember where I was. I think I was 14th Avenue coming towards Canada Way, and there's a little park. And I remembered the song from the church. I started singing it. Jesus loves me, this I know. For the Bible tells me so. And my life was changed that day. And started bawling like a baby. Kind of like now. Nothing's changed. Anyway, and this is kind of weird. A lot of you, my friends here, are not, you know, don't believe in God or the Bible and anything. But anyway, what happened after that was I felt like this oil, this is weird, okay, like warm oil was being poured over top of me. Like it just coming down over me. And I went home. Actually, no. I didn't live at the Honey Shack at the time. I was sharing an apartment with a girl named Kendra Gilks, who was part of the Gilks family. Billy Gilks, Kendra Gilks, Raylene Gilks, and Bonnie Gilks that I used to go out with. Anyway, I was sharing an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment in New Westminster on 8th Street with Kendra, and I loved Kendra. We used to talk about God all the time and stuff, and I was fresh and new to God, so I was on fire. I was on fire, laddie. Anyway, I went home to my apartment. I think I might have had a shower. Then I went to bed and slept. I cried like a baby, of course. Well, why wouldn't you? And then I slept. And it was February at the time. It was cold, crisp February night. And I went out to the balcony and I looked up the stars. And they were brighter than I'd ever seen stars before. You know, I lived in kind of with a cloud over me. And the stars were bright. I looked up at them, and these words came out of my mouth. I said, these words came out of my mouth. It was, hey, I never have to drink again. And of course, I've been sober ever since that time. And there was a long period of rebuilding after that. Because, you know, when you just walk around as a damaged person all those years, you don't just snap your fingers and everything's all right after that. A lot of work, a lot of changing necessary. I met my wife Sue early on, and I love my wife so much. And I miss her right now. Anyway, you know, things went on and I grew up. 24 years old, sober, going to these meetings with old people, and you know, everybody was 40. Old people. Oh, it'd be nice to be 40. No, I'm good where I am. Anyway, lots of stuff happened early in sobriety. Made some great friends that I still have to this day. You know, there's something about people that are going through the same thing that you are that gives you a special bond. And shout out to my buddy Lou Finnemore, Chilliwack. He was my sponsor, and to Linda too. Linda came on a little later, but I love you too, Linda. Anyway, you know, those 12 steps that I talked about, it's not the 12 steps in a book that's impressive. It's the 12 steps imprinted into the character of the people. Some of the people, not all of them, because some people don't do the 12 steps. They just, I don't know what they do, but they don't do them. But anyway, the 12 steps embedded into the character of people. That's what was impressive, not printed in a book. So, yeah, but that was my buddy Lou, and a lot of other people too. A lot of other wonderful, wonderful people I've met on this journey. So, anyway, we went along in life, and Sue and I got involved with some Christians, and the only Christians I knew at the time were, I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, we met some Christians. They were cool. We went to a meeting, and both of us accepted God into our life, Jesus into our lives. And I was about 30, and I think Sue was about 34, and we were living in sin at the time, fighting and arguing half the time, I'm sure. But I love her. And anyway, we got married. We decided, we heard these other people got married on Christmas Eve. We thought, gee whiz, what a great idea. We'll get married on, what a dumb idea, getting married on Christmas Eve. So we got married at our little basement suite, Christmas Eve, and had our party or reception on Boxing Day. And a lot of people couldn't make it because it was Christmas, and now that's fine. We've often thought about getting remarried or retaking our vows or those sorts of things. But anyway, soon after we had a son, Sam. Sam's 30 years old, or coming up on 30 in October. And we lived in Burnaby. No, we didn't live in Burnaby. We lived in, where did we live when Sam was born? New Westminster, BC. Moved back to New West. Moved from Burnaby to New West. Anyway, Sam was born in St. Paul's Hospital. He was late, and he was an emergency cesarean, and he's a miracle boy. Love my son. Love you, Sam. Anyway, and our second child, Stefanie, was born a few years later. 3 years to be exact. Two and a half years. And Steph was born at Surrey Memorial. We lived in Surrey at the time. And life went on. I became a gas fitter. I owned my own business for a long time. I worked for other people for a while and got involved in gas fitting, and had my own business for 25 years. And then lots of stuff happened in between there too. And I'm skipping out on a lot of things that went down. But it got to the point where I couldn't work anymore. Or I could work, but I had to hire my friend Jerry, the saxophone, Jerry Potter, saxophone player. Shout out to Jerry. Love you, brother. Thanks for helping me out. Anyway, I had to get Jerry to help me because I couldn't turn a screwdriver anymore. It was just get to that point. And I don't want to get into why I didn't do a PSA test at that time. It was COVID and da-da-da-da-da. It was just, and I had kind of had a resentment. I hate to admit it, but I had a resentment against my doctor. He was just he had the bedside manner of a 2x4. He was as kind as I could be. He was a horse's ass. That's about as kind as I could get on that. But anyway, I don't carry that around with me anymore. So, we sold our house because I couldn't work anymore. We moved to White Rock. I started going on the keto diet, and that kind of relieved some stuff. I was like, hey, I'm retired, and now I can, I got some of my strength back. But after a while, I just started to lose weight and got sick again because I went off the keto diet. And so I was searching around, looking for answers, on the internet. And the internet can be good, but it can also be too much information. And I'm probably guilty of trying to do self-diagnosis when I should have went to the doctor. And there's lots of shouldas and wouldas in life, and I'm okay with it. But anyway, finally I went to get my PSA test. I'll tell you this, I celebrated 36 years of sobriety on December 1st. On December 8th, they told me that I had prostate cancer. So anybody who knows anything about PSA levels, my PSA level was at 4,070. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But it was like I was supposed to be dead. And boy, did they move! I got, like, usually people have to wait. I got exams and doctor's appointments like right now because of that high PSA level. And shout out to all my doctors for helping me out. Anyway, metastatic cancer. Went to the doctor. He said, some people make it, some people don't. I go, okay, thanks, buddy. And then he sent me to the oncologist at the BC Cancer Agency. And we had an appointment. And she couldn't make the appointment because she had COVID. Probably got it in the hospital. And so we had to do a telephone appointment. And she talked to me for 45 minutes. And basically at the end she said, look, you've got 2 to 3 years to live. You're too far gone for chemo. You're too far gone for radiation, and we're just going to give you some of this medicine here just to give you some relief in the next couple of years. And I want you to know something. I did not accept that, and I do not accept that. The first thing out of my mouth was, first thing I thought, I didn't say anything to her. First thing I thought was, no, it ain't going down like that, man. It just ain't going down like that. So, what do you do when somebody tells you you're gonna die, and you got a couple of years, and you're young? I'm 60. That's young, comparatively. Some people. Anyway, we went home and started researching everything on the internet, and trying all the natural remedies you can think of. I mean, what are you going to do when they tell you you're going to die? I would throw the kitchen sink at it. So that's what we've been doing. And my PSA has come down. I started at 4,070, and then it went to something like 142, and then it went to 100, and then it went to 40, and then it went to 18, and then down. I can't remember all the numbers, but now I'm down at 5.5. So I'm looking forward to this new PSA test that I got the other day. I'll let you know. But yeah, it's been a humbling experience. One thing I can tell you is I think I'm more kind, more empathy, more kindness. And people ask me if I regret anything in my life, and no, I don't actually regret anything, but it would have been nice to be more kind, just in general, more kind. So is that a regret? I don't know what it is, but I wish I was kinder. And I don't dwell on it. It is, all these things. All things is a Bible verse. Romans 8:28. All things work to the good. All things work to the good to those that love the Lord and are called according to His purposes. Anyway, I believe that today. All things work together for the good. So here I am, driving across the country. I thought, I don't really know how many good, active, healthy, limber years that I have. I don't know when I'm going to be too crippled up to do stuff. So I thought, I've always wanted to drive across Canada, and why not write a song with somebody in every province? And hey, let's go visit some relatives and meet some people, some relatives that I never met, and it's been awesome. Everybody's been real kind. My relatives in Saskatoon, my relatives in Camrose. Shout out to Joyce and Art Wall in Elm Creek, just outside of Winnipeg. Those are the people with the pool and the farm. Thank you, Joyce and Art, for putting me up. And anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm on my way to Ottawa now. Oh, and I had that episode with Terry Fox. Oh my goodness. I never thought, I never gave it a thought. Here I am driving across the country. I have cancer, metastatic cancer. Terry had metastatic cancer. He's trying to go across Canada. I'm trying to go across Canada. His middle name is Stanley. My middle name is Stanley. Terry, I found out, is Métis. I'm Métis. One of my friends told me that Terry was a Christian. I'm a Christian. It's just he died actually on June the 28th. I was born on June the 29th. So anyway, I got to that Terry Fox monument, and I wasn't thinking about anything about Terry Fox. I was just like, oh, here's Terry Fox. Yeah, I'll stop here and I'll just go use the washroom, and I'll check it out. Anyway, when I got there, the gravity of the whole situation just kind of hit me, and I got a fella to take a picture of me, and I did a little video there, but I bawled like a baby. Tell the people at the, because there's an information center there and whatnot. I wanted to talk to them, but I couldn't stop crying. So, yeah. So, anyway, that's my story. Sticking to it. Been profound, you know, and people tell me I'm brave, and I don't know if I'm brave or if I'm crazy. It's one of the two. Could be a combination of both, I guess. But here we are, on our way to the country's capital, and I'm hoping to write a song or two there. There's Northeaston and Tammy there, and there's another fella. And also, one of the things I'm going to do in Ontario, hopefully, or Ottawa, is I have a cousin with the same name, Dave Daoust, and then I met another guy on Facebook his name is Dave Daoust. So I want to get together a meeting of the three Dave Daousts, and any other Dave Daousts that are out there, come and join us. But anyway, that's my story, folks. That's all part of what it's part of what I'm all about. And you know, we got a good life today. We got a couple of kids that are doing very well. Sue and I are doing well. Shout out to Oliver, my little puppy. It's you, buddy. It's, I've got so many people praying for me. Thank you, everybody. Oh. Anyway, let's shut her down now because I've got to have some breakfast.